So it's time to teach you how to speak woman. And the biggest lesson you're going to learn is that women communicate emotionally, whereas men tend to communicate a lot more logically. And to make this point, I'm going to give you kind of a story of what happened to me many years ago. So I was on the subway in New York City, and we're late at night. It's me and a couple girls on the subway. And I wasn't even talking to them. I was just overhearing their conversation. They were talking about an episode of Grey's Anatomy that happened. And it was a long subway ride. This was probably like 25-minute subway ride. And I think an episode of Grey's Anatomy is like, I think it's an hour show. So it's like a 1-hour show. They discussed this episode for 25 minutes. Okay? Now, by the end of the subway ride, you would think I would know everything that happened in that episode. Not the case. I knew not one single event from the episode. Like, not one. Because the entire conversation was things like, you know, I really felt like they built up really good tension, but then, like, I was a little let down at the end. And the other person was like, yeah, I was surprised by, like, you know, the way that whatever character reacted. That I really didn't think that was her personality, right? They didn't discuss a single fucking fact the entire goddamn time. It was ridiculous. It was bloody ridiculous, okay? Like, I literally had no idea what happened, but I did know their views and their emotions about what happened, damn sure. That's very different than the way that men would address that conversation. If two men were having that conversation, I would have known the plot, I would have known the events, I would have known the characterization. They might have disputed like fine points of what they saw or heard or whatever, but it would not have been, I think this, I feel this, my emotional experience of it was this, okay? All this to say that women communicate in terms of their emotional journey much more so than in terms of the facts. So if you want to communicate to women, your job is to take them on an emotional journey. This is why we talked about building plot line, drama, those kind of things. It's also why things like storytelling are massively, massively powerful. If you just tell a woman a laundry list of facts, that's not going to do it for her. A man may respond to that. For a woman, usually not the case. But if you tell a girl a good story that captures her emotions, that she can put herself into one of the characters and like imagine herself going through that experience, she's going to experience that, she's going to relate with that, and it's really going to capture her imagination, capture her attention, etc. And it's a great way to, when you're talking with a girl, you want her to have a particular experience with you. You want to have her the experience of experiencing positive emotions, having a particular type of drama, thinking about things like love, things like sex, whatever. And stories are a great avenue for this. Think of this. When you tell a story to a girl, in order to understand that story, she puts herself into the perspective of one of the characters and to a certain extent experiences the story. So let's say hypothetically that you told a story about a girl doing something a little like devious or naughty or a little bit sexual, right? In order for the girl to understand the story, she has to put herself into that role, and she's going to start feeling a little devious, naughty, sexual, etc. Right? And the human brain, the way it works, is kind of interesting. It doesn't make a very good distinction between things you actually experienced yourself and things you watched someone else experience or things that you imagined experiencing. This is why visualization works well in sports. This is why like you can have someone trained to shoot free throws in basketball by visualizing shooting free throws and never touching a basketball. It's because the human brain is not very good at differentiating between an experience and an imagined experience. So putting a girl through, leading her emotions, telling her stories, playing out scenarios, that kind of stuff is very, very useful. Also, when talking to girls, instead of speaking factually, you can say things like, I feel this, or I felt that, or I really like, could feel myself doing this. Notice I'm saying feel, as opposed to think, right? You can go a little further and be like, I cried when, that kind of stuff. You can talk about feelings that way. But the point is, listen to the words that women use. They use these feeling words, they use these emotive words much, much more often. They don't use these factual, logical, mathematical words nearly so much, especially like outside of a work context. Like a lot of girls, maybe if she's an engineer or whatever, yeah, of course at work she's going to speak like an engineer. But in their private conversation, their private communication, notice it's almost all emotional. So if you want to speak to them, you want to speak emotionally rather than logically.